Okay, I'm going to do a quick video about these Lase 1000S sub amps, plate amps actually, that you can install in a pair of passive subwoofers, which is what I've done with several. In fact, I have 8, and I noticed with using 8 of them together splayed correctly, I had phase cancellation issues, and I could hear it. I could even see speakers operating opposingly to each other. So I decided to get one of these phase checkers. It's a Cricket by Galaxy Audio phase checker. It checks cables, phasing on speakers, amps, everything. So I pulled 2 of the subs out, and what these are is basically, and they're pretty beat up looking because I use them a lot. They're my workhorses. But when I ran them passive, they sounded great. But I noticed when I ran them with the sub amps, they worked, but they just didn't sound right. So I brought them home, and I hooked up this phase checker that I just picked up to just a random pair that I pulled out of my truck. And the first one was out of phase, right out of the gate, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So I'm using the XLR cable. There's an XLR output. There's also a TRS output and an external speaker output that will drive a passive speaker, which is pretty cool. And actually, you can use the external speaker output to drive a powered speaker or a speaker hooked up to a power amp if you use the low level switch. See, there's a switch right here. It's a speaker, high, low. Okay, so let's turn this on, and let's get the cab powered up, which it is already. Turn it up a little bit. Okay, should be able to hear that pulse. Okay, so there's my pulse indicator. Okay, let's turn on the receiver, which has a built-in mic. Out of phase. Okay, so, and I did use the color coding that came with the amp. Actually, there was labels on the wires themselves. Now, what this amp is, it's a bridged 2-channel amp that they turned into a subwoofer amp. Now, it's a very cool idea, and they're not really that expensive, but so this is the first one I pulled out, and you can see the grill is off because after I discovered it was out of phase, I pulled the speaker out just to take a look at the wiring, and it seemed correct. The labels were gone, but so what I did was reversed the wires because it was out of phase. So I figured if I reverse the wires, it should be in phase, correct? All right, so let's pop this one in to the pulse generator. Turn it on. It's already ready to go. And let's see what we get. Wow. So I reversed the wires from where they were indicated to be, negative and positive, and it's indicating in phase. Now, they do say to turn up this gain knob slowly, but doesn't really matter. It's still it's in phase. Anyway, so my guess is they either mislabeled the speaker wires, or I'm an idiot and put them on backwards, which is very possible, or this XLR is out of phase. which means that everybody that bought these, maybe some came from the manufacturer wrong or backwards, but everybody that bought these, and if that's the case, they don't even realize that they're running their subs out of phase. So you really wouldn't notice it too much until you went to splay multiple subs together. Then you're going to get phase cancellation, which is exactly what happened to me. I was using 8 single 18s, stacked too high, splayed individually along the front of the stage. And some sounded like they were working and some didn't, but you could actually literally see the driver going in reverse on some of them. So anyway, let's turn that irritating stuff off. But so yeah, that's what's going on. I have 6 more to check. I checked some other speakers. I just picked up these passive JBLs. There's a pair of these here, and nice little cabs, and I got a pretty good deal on them. I checked both of those with an amplifier, and this one was out of phase and that one was in phase. So the phase checker doesn't lie, I guess. So if you have a Lase 1000S power amp, you might want to check to make sure it's in phase. I also found a set of JBL eons that I bought, used powered eons, that were out of phase. So either somebody went in there and wired them out of phase, or the XLR output on the checker is backwards, but I don't see that being the case. Oh, also I made sure to phase check the XLR cables that I'm using twice. You can phase check the cables with the checker just by hooking an XLR to XLR, and I'm not doing a very good video here, but anyway, XLR to XLR, it'll do check continuity, check phase on cables. Plus I used my cheap little cheesy Behringer cable checker, which has done me pretty good for the money. Doesn't owe me anything. I know a lot of people don't like Behringer stuff. I'm not really a big fan of Galaxy Audio stuff, but this is the only one I could find for the money. Anyway, I've tried to contact the company, Lase. I sent them a letter on eBay where I bought the stuff from. I tried to call them. They didn't answer the phone. I've tried to call Galaxy Audio to make sure that this XLR output to a powered speaker is something that can actually happen. You know, am I going to get an accurate reading? Blah, blah, blah. But anyway, so these Lase amps, I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. It could be lazy, don't know. Lase, whatever. These are really popular around where I live now because I showed people on Facebook that I was using these, and next thing you know, everybody I know was buying them for their old speakers, because all of us have old passive speakers laying around if we've been doing this for a while, right? And so, you know, I wanted to use my subs without having to drag a big amp rack. And, you know, with the way things are going, who wants to drag stuff around all the time? The smaller the better, right? Well, that's not what everybody thinks, but so yeah, that's it. Check your XLR input on these amps and make sure that they're in phase, because mine aren't, and I'm gonna have to go and rewire every cabinet, which isn't a big deal, but I might do a follow-up video after I do that and see what I think, see what they sound like. I could definitely hear something not correct when I used them at my last 2 shows, and these were pretty big shows, and you don't want to be doing a big show without big low end. So all right people, later.